You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. The Five Rings Podcast 2016 Rio Summer Olympics edition on the Sports Podcasting Network.
So the boys finally got a medal.
They did. It took 9 days and almost a full 9 days, but Andre DeGrasse finally got a medal for Canadian men.
Yeah. Like that's a story I've been talking about a lot here in Canada. Over the first week is the dominance of the women. Most people are choosing to spin it positively, as they should, in terms of the success of the women. But there is another story there, and that is the struggles of the men. And, well, if you're going to break that shutout, nice way to do it in the 100-meter final, the marquee event of any Olympic Games. And for Canada to be back in the mix is really nice to see. My initial Olympic examples, Olympic times, always included Canada involved in the 100-meter final. And it had been a long, dark spell, just like the swimmers, really, in many ways. And
the Ben Johnson until 88. Then the mantle was taken by Bailey in 96. Bruni Surin was there as for the short time after, but never was able to achieve the same level, which was very difficult because you had a great American sprinters then. And then you had the Usain Bolt Jamaican era. So we were missing a Canadian representative. And when the Usain Bolt era finished in the Olympic, probably last night with a third straight gold medal in 100 meters. He still has 2 events to follow. Andre DeGrasse announced himself to the world, Duane, with a personal best of 9.91 second in a perfect dip. That was the difference between a medal and no medal.
Yeah, precisely. I actually thought when I was watching live, I thought he was fourth when he crossed the line. I went, he's fourth, man. And then they announced it on the screen like a couple seconds later. And of course, like many Canadians, lost it at that point. It was just, that difference between the bronze medal and the potato medal is massive. No one wants to finish fourth. We saw the Canadian divers earlier in the day, Jennifer Bell. The poor girl got back-to-back potato medals in these Olympics. But at any rate, yeah.
By a few points as well, by a handful of points. So you're like, what if I just that's what you have when you're fourth, right? What if I tuck my chin a little bit more? What if I dip more to the line? Those are the differences between fourth and third, and those are the questioning that stays in your mind when you finish fourth.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, back to the 100-meter. Yeah, it was a nice moment for someone that everyone seems to like, too. And that's so rare in the sprinting world where everyone likes Bolt, right? He's a bigger-than-life personality. But DeGrasse is so damn Canadian is what he comes down to,
he's
right?
Like the guy next door. We came out of nowhere, and everybody likes.
Yeah, and exactly. And certainly it seemed at the end there was a silver medalist, I've heard. It certainly seemed at the end that the gold and the bronze medalists were bonding a little bit more. And there was a certain baton passing almost symbolically there going on. Bolt seems to take a liking to young Andre. And, it's an amazing story again. I told it. Sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
He mentioned to Scott Oak of the CBC after, I met Bolt in January. We spent a lot of time together. Both Puma athletes. What was in January was the Puma training promotional camp together to take the pictures and the new products and all that. So they got to know each other a lot, and they're on the same side, if you want to put it that way. The silver medalist is not on the same side, literally, of a lot of the spectrums, if you want to take it that way. So those two have a bromance that's been budding since January. And you mentioned the pass of the baton. I think it's literally DeGrasse has now not necessarily be the best sprinter ever. He might not even never break the record of Bolt. But that's not the idea. If you win gold medals and you're the best in the world at this moment, the fact that you break world records or no, it's irrelevant. You'll still be the best in the world and the fastest man in the world in this present day. And Galen's 34 years old. Where is he going to be in 4 years? Bolt said it's his last Olympic. So who's left?
Yeah, well, DeGrasse is absolutely right now. I would put him in as the early favorite to win the 100-meter World Championship next summer. Assuming Bolt doesn't decide to go one more year to retire in London, because that's there's a lot of marketing potential to go out with a gold medal in London for sure. However, if that's that put aside, I would have to put DeGrasse as the favorite. Keep in mind this kid. He's very young, obviously, and I say kid, loosely there, but nonetheless, he's a kid.
21 years old.
Yeah, and he's only had world-class coaching for 4 years. if you don't know the story, if you're listening internationally, he just decided his mother bugged him to run, like, because she knew he was fast, and there was
when he was like 9 years old, he won like a medal out of nowhere, and it's like a kid competition on a track. But he forgot about all that when he was a teenager.
Yeah, and so basically in a grade 12 track meet here in Toronto,
where he was supposed to go see his friend, but his friend like made fun of him. He's like, you know what? I'll come, but I'll run.
Yeah, so he didn't wear spikes. He had basketball shorts and just like trainers, like running shoes, like without spikes. Won the race. The coach saw it and went, okay, we need to mold this kid because this kid's got raw power and raw speed, obviously.
And the guy who discovered him is the same one that discovered Bailey back then too. So as soon as he saw him, he's like, okay, we need to put him in the program. He needs to learn how to run.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that ultimately down the line, the 200 might end up being his best event too, because he does seem to pick up his speed and have better speed endurance than maybe raw power off the top. He's always a bit of a slow starter, which is the opposite of the other sprinters we've seen. Although Bailey, if you look back to his gold medal in '96, he came from behind as well.
He's very similar to DeGrasse, not how they run, because DeGrasse has some weird hands while running, and you know what? He's fast. Doesn't matter how he runs. That's his thing. He's fast. That's all that matters. But there's a way that the top speed, he catches up. He was catching up to Bolt at the end. Like, add 20, 30 meters to that race. I'm not sure Bolt's win.
Yeah, well, precisely. And look, he's got another 2 races as well. DeGrasse does, and I think for most Canadians, they'll be looking to that final race, and there is, some potential there for another medal for DeGrasse in that 4x1 to end the competition. But all eyes will be on Usain Bolt, and we should talk about him. He is the world's fastest man again, and not even arguably, absolutely the world's greatest sprinter in history, and there's no doubt about that. He is the fastest man who ever lived to this point.
9.58 is his world record. 9.63 is his Olympic record. He did do better than his London 9.63. I don't know if that record will be broken in the next 4 to 8 years. That's a question. Bolt will probably never get close to those records. In 9.81, that was more difficult for him to run in first look than is 9 other times. So maybe we've seen his fastest run already, and we wouldn't be surprised. But those times, even 9.81, like, it took a 9.95 to get to the final, and to get to the podium, it took 9.91 and under.
Yeah, this was his, to me, obviously, in terms of raw wow factor. Beijing was the one. That was the one that everyone just like your jaw dropped when you saw him run in the Beijing final. Obviously,
it was coming out of nowhere a little bit too, because if you were a follower of track and field, you knew Usain Bolt. But if you were just an Olympic fan, he wasn't there 4 years before.
Yeah, and then London to repeat was an amazing accomplishment as well, in terms, again, there was more wow power. To me, though, at his age, the increased depth of the field over the last 4 years, this was the deepest 100-meter that has ever been. There were semifinalists that would have won gold medals 20 years ago. Like, this was a crazy deep field. It's just getting deeper too as coaching spreads all over the world, and we find these raw power athletes, because the 100-meter is a simple sport that can translate anywhere in the world and doesn't require a ton of resources to get good at. Nonetheless, as you provide those resources in coaching, the field gets deeper. Anyway, the point I'm making is that this, to me, was the most impressive of Bolt's 3 because of the age and all of those factors, and the fact that he had to work for it and he still got it done. We'll see how that affects his 200, which has always been, I've always enjoyed watching Bolt run the 200 a lot more than, I enjoy the 200 more than the 100 anyway, in many ways. Obviously, I get the murky value of the 100, but the 200 is a more interesting race because of the speed and how they pull away and all that sort of stuff. The women's 200 today is a good example of that if you watch those heats. So, yeah.
Not just that, Duane, as well. When he was talking about times before coming to Rio, Bolt only mentioned one time that he has a target for, and that's running sub 19 200.
Yeah, that's insane. That's that video game, that track and field video game that you used to hit the buttons back in the day.
The button mashers.
That's the only place you should be running sub 19 in that.
Anyway. But by the way, it's not that I want to toot my own horn right now, but there's only one Olympic game still online right now, and it's London 2012. Guess who's got the 100-meter records? The world record. Yeah, it's me.
That'd be you.
9:47, baby.
But you also the butterfly record or something?
Yes, I have like now 10 records out of 23 because I have no life.
It's a 4-year-old game too at this point.
Exactly. Yeah, I still beat times off.
Yeah, there you go. True enough. The times you
got to represent the 5 rings, though.
Glory lasts forever, Kevin.
Exactly.
Glory lasts forever. Not like Bolt, Kevin. Glory will last forever. No, he. Look, it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't as jaw dropping. There was another jaw dropping performance in the night that was much more spectacular. Obviously, we'll touch on it in a minute, but
Yeah.
certainly just in terms of longevity and the privilege of watching a guy for that long, for him to come through in the end, it was an amazing accomplishment, and it had the Canadian factor, which made the race a little more special for all of us. It was one of those moments. The 100-meter final is always special, and it always makes you a little bit like. It makes you shake, right? Like it's
10 seconds of intensity.
To me, it's the best half hour around it because I include the build up as part of the race. People were loud, like, because there was a soccer game that I had to watch here too, and people were like, "Well, it's only a 10-second race. Well, you're not going to miss much." And you said, "I'm like, you don't get it. You need to watch the build up. You need to watch them walk on the track. You need to watch the warm up. That's all part of what the 100-meter is. It's not a 10-second race. It's a half hour build up to a 10-second of explosion, and then 10 minutes of letting that right
of coming back down to earth."
Yeah, exactly.
What, Duane? We talked about the gold medalists, we talked about the bronze medalists, and you notice we didn't really mention the silver medalists, and it's probably going to stay that way because of history. And in some point in our way that we cover the Olympics, we have to make decisions, and we made one right here.
Look, yeah, obviously, Gatland is a impressive sprinter, but there's a positive test there, and which taints everything, and that's the reality of it. If you're an athlete that dabbles in that and you get caught, you're going to be tainted for the rest of your career. And to me, I don't understand why they get a second chance in. It doesn't make any sense to me. To me, it should be one strike and you're out. If both those tests are demonstrably positive, then I don't know why you let them back in, because any success they have after is still tainted by it because they got their gains to get there, right?
And not just that, Duane. There's that, but there's the fact that there's two different type of testing of positive you can have. You can have an in-competition test and an out-competition test. For me, out of competition, it tells you that you're taking short corners in your training and all, but in-competition test tells me that you're juiced for the race. And for me, it's even worse. So for me, in competition tests, you're out because you're definitely trying to cheat there. Out of competition, then you can add the supplement theory and all that. You can be convoluted. But in competition, for me, it's one and done.
Yeah, no, the world is nuanced. So of course, I don't want to talk too much. Well, I'm going to talk about doping again in a second. So maybe we'll just segue at that point, Kevin, into the medals, unless you have any further thoughts on that, because my wood medal does relate to what we're talking about right now.
Go ahead, Vic.
All right, my wood medal is world record doubts, and the fact that I can't celebrate 43.03 the same way I might have otherwise. 43.03, of course, was the Van de Kerk, that the South African athlete that ran the world record time in the 400 meter last night. An absolutely stunning time, 43.03. We talked about breaking 19 seconds in the 200, breaking 43 in the 4 is the equivalent, and he came damn close. So this is a stunning record. Broke Michael Johnson's record from 1999. Another 90s record falls, although 99 was a little past the era of the true juicing. I'm not suggesting MJ was juicing. 43.18 was that time. At any rate, I still couldn't celebrate it, and it's because of the doubts that surround, largely because of the Russian stuff, but also just in general. We just can't. You look at a time like that, and your first thought is, and that's unfortunate. Same like the women's 10,000 meter world record that was broken earlier this year, because it was broken by so much that you have doubts, and that frustrates me because I want to celebrate these human accomplishments, and I hate the fact that the dopers and the cheaters have taken that away from me and the rest of the world. We should be able to celebrate human accomplishment without the speculating on whether it's legit or not, Kevin.
It's that cynicism, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly. And look, that 400 meter race was the most spectacular, might be the most spectacular thing we see on the track. It might be the most spectacular thing we see in the Olympics. Of the women's 10,000 meters was up there too, because that was crazy. But yet I'm putting in my wood medal thing because of these things. I don't have it in my actual medal. So it's just unfortunate, and it continues to go and go. And I don't know what the answer is, other than more stringent testing consistently. Like you have to register 4 years in advance to go to an Olympics or something, or 2 years in advance anyway, and you're tested once a month or something like that. Like outrageously expensive.
Exactly, it becomes almost outrageous now.
Yeah, and convoluted theories to make sure everyone's clean, and it shouldn't be like that. It's just unfortunate.
Yep, I have to agree very much. My wood is the pool. We talked about the pool where the divers were diving in. The color was off, and it was because the balance of chemicals was not good enough. There was too much hydrochlor. There was too much of one, so it would actually counterbalance the effect of the chlorine, so the algae grew. So that was the case. They've countered that for the diving pool. So the color is still a bit off, but it's closer to blue than it was a few days ago. Now, the pool where the synchro swimming is happening, Dwayne, they had to drain that pool. And you know the size of an Olympic pool. There's a lot, a lot of water. It's not a small task to empty a pool like this, to refill it and get the chemical balance correct. So the synchro swimming can swim in a pool that it can see through so they can see each other and time their maneuvers correctly. Because how do you want to synchronize yourself to somebody that you can't see? That's the question. And they had to drain the pool between Saturday and Sunday and spent a lot of time monitoring the situation. And that just doesn't really happen usually. But hey, you want to have an outdoor pool in a place like Rio, you got to deal with the situation.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the thinking was on the outdoor pool. If it's public use related, then I'm going to give them a bit of a pass. I'm not sure if it is or not. If it was just I want it to look pretty, then that's a problem. Clearly, you don't want to be doing synchro swimming in Jello.
Where are you? Where are you? I'm here. Yeah. All right, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not my favorite sport at the Olympics, Kevin, but I do want them to have the right, place to pursue their craft. It's very impressive what they do to actually synchro. I mean, I appreciate them as athletes. It's not aesthetically what I like, but yeah. Certainly that pool has been a bit of a running joke throughout these Olympics. I believe it's not dangerous because algae is not dangerous, but yeah, it does take away from the.
It might be a little what's that word? Like a little sludgy, maybe, but they're not going to get it to that point. It's already under control and it's getting better. But for the actual big pool that they had to drain, you're talking about a big task to do quickly to not delay the Olympics. So no, this is my wood medal, the Rio environment weather mismanagement of the water quality for a pool, the only pool that they actually controlled that's outside, which is not the lagoon and the water quality. Turns out that's the one they had problem with.
You know what? In a general sense, these games are not running as smooth as they could. There's no doubt about that. However, it's nowhere near what people feared leading in. It never is. However,
well, we don't know the whole situation as well, though. We'll have to see after the games what truly happened.
Yeah, and there are snafus that are happening here and there that we're hearing about, and I think there are certain people that are inclined to jump all over them. Of the robbery, of course, that happened with the swimmers.
With Ryan Lochte. Put a loaded gun to his forehead. Had to give his phone and his at least not the medal, but his phone, his wallet, and all that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. That will happen anywhere in the world where there's. I mean, I in Barcelona, I had a security guard chase me down to make sure that I knew that someone was trying to pick our pocket. So this will happen in places that the people consider to be safer than Rio too, right? So it's not unique to there, and it's just unfortunate these stories sometimes take away. And I do think that they've been doing, generally speaking, a decent job, but obviously the organizational level is not maybe the same as you would have seen in Beijing. So that's just the fact there. But the pool is kind of funny. The diving, I watched a lot of diving over the past couple of days, and it looks kind of gross. I don't know if I'd want to swim in it.
But the positive, at least it can truly differentiate the water and the sky now.
Yeah,
it's green and blue, so there's no confusion possible.
Oh, it's kind of going brown now. Like there's
but now it's back to actually blue. Like last night, it was kind of like closer to teal, transparent at least, and close to what it used to be.
We were talking about the water and the water jump in the equestrian. That's just pure blue paint, so that was kind of fun.
Exactly, just literally paint.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway. All right, let's move to my bronze. And I'm going to give a bit of a lifetime achievement bronze here for an athlete that just raced his final competitive race, likely of his Olympic career. He will race in a B final tomorrow. That is Adam Van Koeverden, who was one of the breakout stars of the Athens Games here in Canada and has been a real ambassador to the Olympic movement and to various charities that are close to it, like Right to Play and charities like that. Just generally a guy that has really stepped up and been a voice for, an advocacy voice for women in sport, for disadvantaged people in sport, for handicapped sport, for all that stuff. He's really gone above and beyond just being an athlete for the last 12 years. He's at the end. They were talking on the race today. he finished. He had a real snub at the start.
Yeah,
Something happened at the start. He just couldn't never caught up. He was like sixth in the semifinals, top three at advance. So he'll, like I said, or top four at advance. He'll race in the B final, which is for seventh and whatever. He'll probably for pride want to go out and have a good result there, but nonetheless, it's not necessarily the same intensity or whatever. So by all intents and purposes, his Olympic career ended, in that semifinal today. Like I said, just a real great ambassador for Canadian sport and for the sport of kayak in this country, and well known and well respected around the kayaking world. Had better days in the past. Today wasn't his best, but he still went out sort of dignified with his conversations on CBC. He was almost in tears, talking about how one of the other athletes came up to him and thanked him for his career and congratulated him on a great career, because they know it's at the end too. And it's kind of a nice thing there and a nice story. And I'm sure that he will probably continue on in the sport, probably in a coaching role. I suspect he'll be the voice on the broadcast at the next Olympics as well. So good for you out of Vancouverton. I enjoyed watching you. And I'll miss you, but I'm sure you have lots to give back to the sport going forward.
My bronze medal goes to Mark Cavendish, currently fourth in the Omnium on the track. Duane, Mark Cavendish, famed British cyclist, who actually won 4 stages of the Tour de France this summer. So quick turnaround for Mark Cavendish from the road to the track. He has grown up as a track athlete, and he always made a quick turnaround to track when the Olympics are coming, especially when the road race is not necessarily made for him. And when it's not necessarily a pure sprint, he's not the one to go for it like it was in London. That's different. But you're talking about here, Mark Cavendish is fourth. He's performing well in the Omnium. It's very interesting competition. It's over a few days. It's literally one of everything almost of the track world. So you have a points race. You have it's called the elimination race. So every lap and a half, the last guy gets eliminated. He has a light on his bike that starts to flash so he knows he's eliminated. So there's like a type of sprint all across. So he finished like a seventh, I think, or sixth. So he got a lot of points, but you get points in all the race, and there's a time trial, there's a point race. The point race is left. It's going to be in the next few days. And Mark Cavendish, for me, is performing really well after a very tough Tour de France. And it's not easy to transition from the road to the track in a very short period of time. He's going to be battling for a medal. So Mark Cavendish, for me, is my bronze medal for today.
Sir, it's nice to see the cycling world, these professionals, these high-end professionals, guys that have a great career, just sort of embrace the Olympic movement in a way that I don't know. Well, actually, I saw a profile and talked about when they first allowed professional cyclists in, that people were kind of leery, just like golf. But then there was a leading guy, a Spaniard guy, forgive me, I don't know the name off the top of my head, decided that he was going to go and won the first race that pros were in. And from that point forward, the story, at least according to what I saw, was like, okay, since he's in, we're in. And it's become like an event where the pros just go, and they understand that it's part of their 4-year cycle, and they look at it maybe a little differently than they do the Tour de France or whatever. But certainly it's nice to see
going
them.
to have the track specialists performing well as well. So the dedication that it takes to transition, like I mentioned, it's a quick turnaround for Mark Cavendish. Before the Tour de France, he already began his preparation for the track. He already was going on the track whenever he could to get the feels, to make sure that he knew how to make the transition. It's different muscles as well, because you're looking at an endurance to sprint. And Mark Cavendish, the type of rider he is, he's a sprinter. So he's in the peloton majority of the day. And when the race comes at the end, when the peloton has caught up to the leading group, his train attacks, and he's the last one to launch, and he's the first to the line. That's his type of racing. To transition this to the track back and forth, you have to reactivate some muscle that are dormant for a few years. So it takes a lot of dedication to make that transition correctly.
What I would imagine, yeah, it's quite impressive. Like, cycling's a very malleable sport in many ways. We see a lot of crossover athletes because cycling's a big part of training for a lot of sports, a lot of endurance sports. So it becomes easy to transition in many ways. But transitioning between the disciplines has to be quite a difficult thing. It's a lot different to ride in a velodrome than I imagine than on a road, Kevin. Right?
It's night and day.
Yeah, and I'm curious, as long as we're on this topic right now, how normal is the transition from mountain biking to a road bike? Was that something that happens, or that people can do? It
does happen in certain particular cases, depending on what type of rider you are on a mountain bike. Mountain bike is more climbing, so those muscles does help. Ryder Echelon got to start in mountain biking. A lot of Lars Boom comes to mind, a driver from the Holland that were transitioned successfully from mountain biking. You do have a profile if you're not too tall and have the right type of power and wattage in your leg, you can transition and become a very good climber. It's going to be difficult for you to get the feel and the power and the endurance and become a rouleur. So on the time trial, it will be difficult to have that because that's one part of the mountain biking discipline that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in mountain biking. Like the endurance, the time trial, go 54 kilometers an hour average for 40 kilometers. That doesn't exist on mountain bike cycling. So that is hard to transition. But to become a good climber and to have a good base, yeah, mountain biking is pretty efficient as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, mountain biking, I think, is a gateway into the sport for many people too, at a recreational level when they're younger, and maybe then they transition from there. Especially in countries like here, where it's, I think, a little more popular than road cycling because it's more accessible, right? Like you can get a decent mountain bike cheaper than you can get a decent like track bike or road bike.
Over the years, though, I've never seen as much cyclists on the road as now, and that's here, GTA, and between the two, the amount of cyclists is growing exponentially daily.
Fair enough, and I don't think there's much transition between BMX and the other disciplines.
No, that's the one that's truly different. Even though you can never say never, but yeah,
that's a different gig altogether. That's more closer to NASCAR. It's a lot of fun to watch, and it's coming up soon. So
yeah, exactly. So the BMX cross is going to be very fascinating to watch.
Yeah, it's almost it's the most winter sport of the summer sports.
Yeah, it's a ski cross, but just with a bike.
Yeah, it's essentially what it is. Anyway, it's fun.
Okay, so you can do this, but just go with a bike. All right.
There you go. All right, we'll watch that one. I'm sure we'll talk about it. I actually have that one circled on my calendar to watch it when it happens. That will be my second screen for sure the day that launches. All right, my silver medal, Kevin, on the day is the Chinese divers and the Chinese diving program. They did look, it's just excellence personified. They haven't yet swept the golds, I should say. They usually sweep the medals, but as much as they could allow 10 in, I'm sure they'd finish in the top 10 positions.
Yeah, there's an Italian that swooped up the bronze, Tania Pagnoto.
Yeah, well, there's only two Chinese. They lost to the British diver. It was the first British diving medal in years. I should mention too, our friend Olympic statman, his yesterday had a very interesting stat come out. The English won gold medal in gymnastics, artistic gymnastics on the floor. It was the first gold medal they'd won since they started competing 112 years ago. The 1900 Olympics, 116 years ago. And that was broke a record for the longest stretch of continued participation without winning a gold medal for any one country. So there you go. It was kind of interesting, I thought.
Just while you mentioned records, Canada, for the first time in its history, is getting medals for 9 days consecutively. So that's a record as well. They never got medals in a Olympic game 9 days in a row. So that's done. And it's in the summer, and it's surprising.
Yeah, even ahead of Vancouver, which was eight days. I mean, Vancouver had a lot of more goals, obviously, but certainly a lot to like there. But anyway, to get back to the Chinese, you got to appreciate excellence. That's what the Olympics is all about. And it's almost like you need a rest of the world gold, silver, and bronze, and just let the Chinese have a match. Like go for the real gold. They just dive off against each other and then let the rest of the field go. Because that's almost where it is. That they are night and day above everyone else. And I'm not too sure why. Obviously, coaching plays a big role. It's a tradition. Like any time that a sport has success, it drives more people into the sport. It's obviously the Chinese have obviously given a lot of.
Well, it's the fact that the athletes are put in the program and that's all they do day in, day out for 365 days a year, probably as well.
Well, yeah, and like I said, it's a tradition of it there too, and there's a lot of emphasis put on the artistic sports within the Chinese system as well, and then certainly this diving would be within that realm. Although I don't think it's not fully artistic. There's a lot of physicality to it as well, obviously, but nonetheless, it's about lines and doing things precise. So it's
a judge sport, yeah. So
yeah. At any rate, they put a lot of stock in that, and they certainly are rewarded for it, and they're a joy to watch. They're rip entries. They're so good at the entries. They're night and day to the rest of the field. You watch, like for instance, Jessica Bill. I was watching her, and she's a very powerful diver too. Like she's a lot bigger and a lot more muscular than in her makeup. The other divers that are at the top are a little slighter, so she's naturally going to be a little heavier hitting that water. That's just human nature. But the difference between her entry with a little bit of splash, and you can see the over rotation because the water goes up a lot more, and the Chinese, when they hit, and I swear to God, they might over rotate just as much as other divers, but they know how to control that splash in such a way that they maintain their marks. They maintain the because it's not judged off a monitor, right? It's judged in blind time.
They know how to hide their imperfections.
Yeah, it's like a baseball catcher that pulls the ball into a strike, right? So the tricks the umpire. So
exactly. So they compensate by the rest of their body to stop the rotation or to just make it look like they didn't splash. Or I know what you mean.
Yeah, and look, they likely will win the rest of the gold medals out in this competition, and we're getting near the end of the diving. It's a sport that I've always enjoyed. I mean, as I've said before in the show, I used to watch with my mother a lot, so I think I've taken a bit of that on. So it's the artistic sport I probably watch the closest. So anyway, I just enjoy watching them, and I think that we should give them notice because we overlook them because they're so good. And when a country is so good, we tend to focus on those chasing a lot more than the ones being chased because the story is better. The narrative is better if they do get caught, if they do slip up the one time, and we ignore the 95% of the times they don't slip up, Kevin. So the Chinese divers are my silver medalists today.
My silver medalist is a combination of two performances of sport that had a lot of controversy going into Rio. A lot of people talk about the tennis tournament and the golf tournament because of superstars coming out. People worried about what's going to happen with the Zika virus, with criminality, and all those aspects. Milos, I'm looking at you. Andy Murray, Justin Rose. Seems like Team GB was not worried about some mosquitoes and decided to go for glory, Duane, in your own words, and got themselves some gold medal, repeating champion for Andy Murray from London to Rio, and Justin Rose, the first gold medalist in 112 years in the golf at the Olympics.
Yeah, Canada couldn't repeat.
No, Graham Dillette, unfortunately, got the yips back 2 days ago, so got a bad third round that took him out of contention.
I might as well jump in and let people know here that my gold medal is Justin Rose. So there you go. And more to the point,
I'll just focus on Andy Murray and Dillette and I'll let Justin Rose for you.
Yeah, fair enough. But no, we can talk in generalities together about this. Yeah, I'm not the biggest golf fan on TV. Like I golfed when I was growing up. I was on the high school golf team. So I was half decent, I guess. I mean, the sport always made me want to stab things. So I eventually gave it up. But nonetheless, I don't really watch it on TV a lot. But that was really compelling TV the last 4 or 5 holes of that final round yesterday when you were watching them going head to head. And they were lucky in the sense that it was a highly competitive stretch drive. The two golfers were golfing in the same threesome, so that it was absolutely something that was just much watch TV for anyone who has any understanding of what sport is. And as I said, I tweeted out something that got a lot of attention yesterday. It's one of my biggest retweets ever. Yep. And that's it was about Justin Rose. Things he's thinking of, and it was like glory, patriotism, legacy, things he's not thinking of, mosquitoes, right? That was the kind of joke that I made, and a lot of people like that. So thank you if you're listening for the first time. But I think that the other tweet that I made just a few minutes before that was one that I thought was more analytical, and it was like, we're witnessing live the birth of a 5th major right now, and it felt that way. Like the tensity. It wasn't the John Deere Greater Toledo Open we were watching. It was the Olympic gold medal. These guys wanted it badly, and they were playing as if it was the Open or the U.S. Open or whatever. Like it was an intense experience, and I think that final round is going to change everything about how the world of golf perceives this tournament moving forward. And it is now, in fact, I believe this strongly, it has become the 5th major in that hour of television. It became the 5th major, and it's not going away now. And it should be in the Olympics. It's one of the most, I know a lot of people look down their nose at it, but I don't get that. It's one of the most played sports in the world. It absolutely should be in the Olympics, and it's not that big of a burden in most countries that host it to find a golf course to play it in. It's a bit different in Brazil, but nonetheless,
they made it work.
Go ahead.
I was going to say too, Duane, we had a reservation with the format of golf tournament because they just used it as a just normal tournament, 4 days, and not a team type of competition. And I guess they chose the right one because at the end of the day, it might be more important for the players if you do it like this instead of a Ryder or President Cup format for the Olympics. Now that you focus individually too, you can. It's like tennis. It's like another major. It's like another Grand Slam in that year.
Yeah, exactly. And it was very, very compelling. And I look forward to the female event too, because I think on the female side, as I've said before on this show, it's even more important to them. I suspect that it could potentially become the biggest tournament on the female side. I mean, I'm sure they want to win the Open or the U.S. Open on the women too, but by and large, in terms of their attention and their ability to be seen on a more equal level with the men, the Olympics is going to provide them with that platform. And obviously, there's a Canadian story with the young golfer Brooke Henderson that we're all cheering for here. So there's that as well. So I'm looking forward to that in the days ahead. And it's 4 days, and you don't have to watch every second of it. I'm sure there are people out there that do, and I think that's important for the Olympic movement too. It's a different demographic that they're pulling in. A lot of their attention over recent years have been to ad sports that are going after the X crowd, the young hip crowd. But you don't want to ignore the grumpy old men either, right? Because the grumpy old men spend money, and your sponsors want that. And this is a sport that I was thinking of. There's a radio personality here in Toronto that's not kind of gruff and doesn't really love the Olympics that much, and it's Bob McCowan's his name. If you're Canadian, you don't know who that is.
I'm not even surprised. Yeah. Wow.
I can imagine him watching the entire golf tournament and nothing else in the Olympics. And that's fine, because it hooks more people in to the games. And that's really what it's all about. And I think that that's a good thing. And as I said, I'm glad that this, and the other part of this too is like Sergio Garcia put a tweet out, like Greg Blight, you mentioned him earlier. He put some tweets out to the same idea, but Garcia tweeted like the golfers that aren't here are going to regret this. Everyone's been first class. This has been an amazing experience. And that says it all. And that's a guy that's been around the game for a long, long time, Kevin.
Exactly. All right. My gold medal, Duane, is, I'm going to butcher that last name. Sorry, Anita, but I'm butchering your last name. Anita Wlodarczyk from Poland won the hammer throw competition, and not just win it, she won it with her throw of 82.29, with is the longest throw ever made in the women's history of hammer. And her second throw, which was not even good enough for her, is the best ever, and she beat the second position. She was at 76.75, so close to over 6 meters in front of her closest competition. The best ever throw, but the two best ever throw in the hammer competition for women happened earlier today. Anita Wlodarczyk got my gold medal for the day, because not just a world record, but it's a world record, and it's the longest throw ever made in the women's hammer.
Well, there you go. You ever tried to throw a hammer?
Well, not a hammer. The agility and the balance necessary, because when they're doing that spin, that weight is not necessarily that heavy, but with the centrifugal force and the fact that you don't have the control 100%, you lose traction with your feet and you get that roll going. And we were probably laying on our face with the hammer hitting us and broken our back.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I've only once the try, because hammer wasn't really. It's not a apparatus that you see a lot in the high school scene or the youth scenes, because it's dangerous to throw, right? So I've only seen it a couple times back when I was around the track world, and you pick it up and it's like, how the hell does anyone do this? The throwing athletes are amazing. They're so agile and fast. Like, these are big people for the most part, right? Like big, strong people. And I know, forgive me for doing a male analogy here, because I only know the times on that. I remember Dylan Armstrong, the Canadian shot putter, that they said that he ran like a 10-100. Like, good God, this is a large man. Maybe it was 10-4, 10-5. It was in the tens anyway. Like, that's obscenely fast for a large guy to be lumbering down the field, and that just tells you the explosiveness that's needed. There some people that don't understand track might look at those guys and just say, oh, well, they're kind of, they have some fat on them or whatever, so they're not athletes. No, come on, they're incredibly powerful people. That it's the ultimate in the power side of speed and power, right? Those sports, and they're quite compelling to watch. It's unfortunate we don't get to see them on TV as much, but if you want to go on the feeds, you can watch you can go, if you don't know this already, you can watch any single individual field event. There's a feed for it. You can just watch that entire field event on your computer if you want.
Exactly, which in London was the same case. But before that, we never saw the throwing competition, or we just saw a quick highlight package. Now we get to see the different shots, the javelin competition, how it changed over the years when they changed the javelin and how you throw it, and the weight balance of it to make sure that it doesn't land in the stands, because that was a fair possibility back then that eventually somebody would die because the javelin would just go go too far. But things have changed. Now you can watch those competition. And I was always, because of the fact that we didn't get to watch them when I was growing up, I was always wondering what it would look like, the entire competition. And I never got to see it. So it had like a mythology to those sports for me. And now I get to watch them and discover the power, the speed, the explosion necessary to either throw that discus, that hammer, or that shot put further than you thought was possible.
Yeah, the quick anecdote. I mean, there's a guy in my high school, so we're going back a few years now, who broke the basically it was the regional record in the javelin. He was a few years older than me, and I remember watching it live. And the throw was only like 55 meters or something like that, so a little further than what the heptathlon athletes were throwing it the other day. And to watch how far and how graceful it flies, and how impressive 55 meters is, let alone like 80 or 90 or whatever the hell they're throwing in the main event, I can't even imagine. It's really, really impressive to see live. And like I said, that was for 55 meters, not what a absolute Olympian world-class athlete was throwing. By the way,
specialists throw a lot further than the exactly.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like, so even that, I remember how impressed I was watching that. So I can't imagine how impressed I'd be watching an Olympian throw. Anyway, genetics too with that guy. He was drafted in the NHL. So there you go. Athletes are athletes, right?
Exactly. And in sports like shot put, hammer, the throwing sports, it is translatable because the technique is coachable. But if you have the power to begin with and you're able to transfer that power to the object you're throwing, you're going to throw it damn far.
Exactly. All right, Kevin. We got Daniel Squizzato booked for Soccer today. If you're interested in having a preview of the Olympic semifinals for the women, we'll probably touch on the men, Kevin and I, as well in the show. That will be Soccer Today, which we'll start. What do you want to do it, Kevin? You want to do it at 12, or you want to do it at 12:15 straight to Daniel?
12 is perfect.
12 o'clock. So, come back with us in 15 minutes. And until that time, Kevin, why don't you say goodbye?
Until tomorrow, tomorrow won't be at 11 tomorrow due to scheduling conflict, but tomorrow night we will be right back with 5 Rings Daily. And until then, on your podium, folks. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.